Your child came home from a full day and fell apart. Maybe it was a meltdown over something small. Maybe they shut down completely and could not tell you why. Maybe they were fine at school and impossible the moment they walked in your door. You have been wondering what is wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with them. Something else entirely is. Two civilizations documented what it is, one by removing it completely, one by protecting it deliberately. Both of them did it thousands of years before your child ever walked through your front door. On a personal note, what I've learned during my research for this channel is this: your child acts differently and feels different about you, above all else in the world. You are either their safe zone, where they can unleash tension, or we as parents are the source of the tension. For example, a child may have had a really bad day at school. Upon seeing you, that all changes for the better because they are now in their safe zone. The opposite of that is what is covered in this video, and you'll be surprised at how big a part we, as parents, play in how our child copes with overstimulation on a daily basis. I'll explain my thoughts on this later. This is going to be very interesting, so let's get started. Picture the city of Sparta, in ancient Greece, roughly 2,500 years ago. A boy of 7 has just been taken from his home. He sleeps on a thin mat on a stone floor. He trains in an open field from before the sun rises until well after dark. He is cold. He is hungry. That is by design. His childhood of playing in the courtyard, sleeping near his mother, eating family meals, all of it is over. He has entered the Agoge, the Spartan state training system, that historians have documented as one of the most relentless childhood environments ever recorded. From sunrise to well past dark, every hour is structured. Physical training, military drills, competition, deprivation of food and sleep, deliberately built into the schedule. The Agoge did not give children rest. It treated rest as weakness. Historians studying the Spartan Agoge have documented what this produced. Children trained inside this system became extraordinarily capable in one narrow area, military combat. But outside of that, researchers and historians have noted consistent patterns. Spartan adults showed difficulty with emotional flexibility. They struggled in environments that required negotiation, creativity, or the kind of calm thinking that comes from a nervous system that has been allowed to recover. The machine produced warriors. It did not produce whole people. Modern developmental science explains exactly why. A child's nervous system is not built to run at full capacity all day without recovery time. Researchers studying what happens in a child's brain and body during high-stimulation environments have documented that sustained stimulation produces a rise in cortisol, body's stress hormone. Cortisol is useful in short bursts. It helps a child focus, compete, and respond to challenges. But when cortisol stays elevated hour after hour, with no window for the nervous system to come down, the brain begins to degrade. Attention gets harder. Emotional regulation becomes impossible. Small things become enormous. And the child who held it together all day finally comes home to the one place where they feel safe enough to fall apart. That is not bad behavior. That is a nervous system at its limit. The Agoge produced that limit deliberately. Modern childhood is producing it accidentally. That is the same outcome, different causes. Same broken nervous system at the end of the day. Researchers studying children's schedules in 2026 have found that from flashing screens and packed school days to extracurricular activities and constant notifications, children today are living inside the most stimulation-dense environment any generation of children has ever experienced. A study published in Pediatric Research found that toddlers with greater direct screen exposure showed patterns of increased sensory sensitivity, meaning their nervous systems became harder to regulate, not easier, the more stimulation they received. The Agoge removed the recovery window entirely and documented the result in the children who came out the other side. The civilization that documented what happens when you build the recovery window back in deliberately was 10,000 miles away and had never heard of Sparta. But they had found the same answer from the opposite direction. Picture a household in Edo period Japan roughly 300 years ago. A wooden home. A paper screen door open to a small courtyard. A child sitting alone on a reed mat, doing nothing. Not waiting for something to start. Not in trouble. Not bored in a way that needs fixing. Just sitting. and the parent in the next room leaves them there on purpose. That deliberate pause had a name. Cultural historian Donald Ritchie, who documented Japanese aesthetic principles extensively, described the concept of ma pronounced with a soft, open vowel as the intentional use of emptiness that gives meaning to everything around it. In traditional Japanese households, the rhythm of a child's day was not simply structured activity followed by more structured activity. It included deliberate transitions, quiet moments, unscheduled space, time with no goal and no stimulation that functioned as recovery windows for the nervous system. Ma was not the empty part of the day. Ma was what made the rest of the day possible. Researchers studying Japanese child development have found that Japanese children show lower rates of behavioral dysregulation, which means falling apart, shutting down, or losing emotional control compared to children in highly scheduled Western environments. Cultural researchers have pointed specifically to the role of unstructured time and lower stimulation density in the daily rhythm of traditional Japanese childhood as a contributing factor. The nervous system needs a pause, and the civilization that built that pause into daily life documented what it produced. That pattern stimulation followed by deliberate recovery is not just a Japanese cultural preference, it is a biological requirement. And every civilization that built it produced calmer, more regulated children. Every civilization that removed it paid a price. If what you are learning right now about why your overstimulated child comes home falling apart and what their nervous system is actually asking for is giving you a new way to see the meltdown at your front door, please take a second to like and subscribe. This channel investigates what history found that no parenting tip list has stopped to explain. One click helps the next parent find this. Thank you. Here is the specific thing researchers have found that you can verify in your own home this week. When your child comes home from school or a full day of activities, do not immediately fill that transition time with a question, a task, a screen, or a conversation they have to manage. Give them 20 minutes of nothing. Not structured nothing, just nothing. Let them move slowly. Let them sit on the floor. Let them eat something quietly without a screen in front of them. Researchers studying what they call nervous system recovery windows in children have documented that the transition period immediately after high stimulation environments is the most important regulatory window of a child's day. What happens in those first 20 minutes determines whether the nervous system comes down or stays elevated through the rest of the evening. The meltdown that happens at the front door is not the beginning of a problem. It is the end of a day that never gave the nervous system what it needed to come back down. The pattern that shapes how you respond in those first 20 minutes at the door was passed down to you long before you had a child. Before the biblical layer that ties all of this together, find out which inherited pattern is running in that moment. Take 2 minutes right now and find out which inherited pattern shapes how you manage your child's time. The free pattern identifier quiz in the description below identifies whether you carry the rescue pattern, the silence pattern, the correction pattern, or the achiever pattern, the 4 documented patterns passed through generations of families. 2 minutes. Free. Link in the description. Come back, because the final layer of this investigation named this principle before either Sparta or Japan existed. So, let me give you the second part of my personal note here. I've started thinking of it in this way now. When we get home from a hard day at work or whatever has made our day harder than normal, we often can't wait to get home and flop down in our favorite chair or recliner and just relax for a while. I never thought this might be the case for either of my children. As I raised my kids, I assumed that school was not work, it was just school. But as I've researched this information, I'm feeling that being overwhelmed comes at many levels, and sometimes kids just need a little while to relax after coming home too. And they get overwhelmed. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Then come back, as the documentary is about to reveal something you would not have expected. The book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 2, says this: "On the 7th day, God finished the work and rested." The Sabbath principle was not a rule about which day to go to church. It was a principle about how living things work. Biblical scholars at Blue Letter Bible and within the Reform Judaism tradition have documented that the Hebrew word used here, Shabbat, describes the deliberate act of stopping in order to allow something to be what it is. Ancient Hebrew wisdom wrote this principle into the very first pages of their most sacred document, and what it says is this: rest is not the absence of activity. Rest is what makes activity mean something. A child whose day has no Shabbat, no deliberate pause, no unscheduled space, no window where the nervous system is allowed to simply be, is a child whose nervous system never completes its cycle. Researchers studying children's cortisol patterns have confirmed this in peer-reviewed studies. Children who have consistent daily recovery windows, unstructured time with low stimulation, particularly in the late afternoon transition period, show lower baseline cortisol levels, faster emotional recovery after stress, and significantly fewer behavioral incidents in the evenings. The ancient Hebrew principle and the Japanese concept of Ma and the developmental neuroscience all land on the same finding. The pause is not the empty part of the day. The pause is what makes the child whole. History documented it across 3 civilizations spanning 3 continents and 2,500 years. Science confirmed the biology. Ancient wisdom named the principle before any of them had language for the nervous system it was describing. The Spartan Agoge removed the pause entirely and documented the result. Traditional Japanese childhood built the pause deliberately and documented the result. And ancient wisdom named the principle in the 2nd chapter of the oldest book in the biblical canon. All 3 are pointing at the same answer. Your overstimulated child is not the problem. It's something else entirely. Not the screens, not the schedule, not the child. The absence of one thing. The thing every civilization that raised calm children built into every single day. The deliberate pause that tells a child's nervous system the threat is over and it is safe to come back down. Build the pause back in. 20 minutes of nothing at the front door. 1 unscheduled hour in the afternoon. 1 evening, with no activity on the calendar. If what you just heard landed, do not stop here. Because what this episode investigated is one piece of a much larger pattern, and the full picture is something most parents never get to see. There is one video on this channel that traces all of it. Complete inherited architecture of why their child is exactly who they are, why the distance between you feels the way it feels, and what the full record of history, science, and scripture shows actually closes that distance at the root level where the pattern lives. If there is only one other video you'll watch from this channel, this pillar video has to be it. The link is linked in the description below. Watch it next.